Yo, what's up guys, it's Blaze Monkey, your boy is back for another video. We're going to be doing another anime review. So essentially, this is kind of going to be like a series. Now the last anime I reviewed was Gleipnir, so go and check that out. And essentially, I'm going to be reviewing all of the anime that came out in spring 2020. And then I'll review all the anime that came out in summer of 2020. And we're essentially going to be reviewing seasonal animes, new animes as such. So in this review, we're going to be going over Tower of God, arguably the biggest anime from spring. Well, it was the second biggest actually, right before Kaguya-sama. I haven't watched Kaguya-sama, so I won't be reviewing it. Sorry for that. But we will be doing a lot of animes that came out in the spring, and once animes finish airing in the summer, such as God of High School and ReZero Season 2, you can bet your boy is going to review it. So, let's go over a Tower of God review. Also, there's a playlist that will be linked in the description that you should definitely go check out if you did enjoy this, because there's a Gleipnir review, and I'm sure you'll find many more if you're watching this video in the distant future. So, Tower of God. I've also made a Tower of God Rachel Explained video, so let's get into it. So, Tower of God. What really was it? What am I talking about? So, I would say Tower of God was really highly anticipated. It was an anime that was supposed to come out in spring of 2020, and a lot of people were looking forward to it. So Tower of God, it was a Crunchyroll original in association with Webtoon. So this was a series that was expected to serve as sort of the gateway for Webtoon adaptations and acknowledgements of Webtoons, and as an adaptable source material on its own. So yes, as you can see now, we also got God of High School, which is also a Webtoon, and we're probably going to get a lot more, and this is all because of Tower of God, who opened the gateway for these animes. And it was a 13-episode season. It was produced by TMS, and it covers recent works. It covers the first season, and the initial chapters of the webtoon do look a bit bland and, tasteless. I have read the first few chapters of it. I can say that the music performed in this anime is pretty good. It's performed by a lot of different popular Korean boy bands, and the OST is composed by Made in Abyss Kevin with an auditory thrill. Now, I guess we'll go into what this anime really is about. So, the plot, what is the plot? So the plot kicks off with a young and ambitious boy named Bam, and I believe his name is Yoru in the Japanese adaptation, and he essentially wants to climb the tower, or the Tower of God, the gateway towards someone's greatness. Head-On is the guardian of the tower, and he lays down the rules to climb the tower, and he presents the first challenge. Intimidating at first glance, Bam overcomes with little effort due to the help of Yuri. Yuri is one of the princesses of Jihad, and I'm essentially going to go over the first episode and what happens. Now, the princesses of Jihad. Now, the ruling household of the tower. So, I guess we'll go over a bit of this. The main villain, it seems like this is the main villain, is King Jihad. Now, King Jihad, I don't really know anything about him. All we currently know is he has 13 daughters, I believe, and they each possess a sword, so we have 13 swords, and they're all extremely powerful, and we currently have met, I believe, 3 of them. Now, let's continue on with the plot. We also learn a lot about Rachel, and we find out that the reason why Bam is climbing the tower is for this girl named Rachel. Now, Bam, he appeared out of nowhere and was taken in by Rachel, who transformed into a kind, presentable person. So Bam was taken in by her, essentially. She kind of parented him, I guess you could say. And a lot of people say Bam is a simp. I highly disagree. I think that the way Bam sees Rachel is the way a dog sees its owner, because she, kind of raised them, to be honest with you. Moreover, we also see that Rachel is sort of very attached to the tower. She really wants to climb to the top. If you want to learn more about Rachel, I highly suggest you go and watch my Rachel Explained video. That will also be linked in the description. Bam then proceeds on after beating the intro to round 2 with Yuri, the Princess of Jahad's sword, which is also named the Black March. After a confrontation with him, Yuri ends up running and pursuing Bam in order to retrieve her sword. In round 2 of the qualifiers, Bam meets Khun. Khun is a blue-haired, kind of super smart boy. You know, he's this mastermind kind of dude. He has an interesting past which we don't know that much about. And he seems like more of a brain over brawn guy. And then we meet someone who is the complete opposite called Rock. He is a kind of crocodile alligator looking dinosaur creature kind of dude. And he basically likes to fight people. That's the best way I can explain him. So the three become a trio and they begin to cross over multiple different obstacles and hurdles, voiced by the impressive Tsuda Kenjiro is Liroro, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. I'm just looking at this source right now. Liroro, I believe that's how you say his name. I've just got a page full of the characters here. Liroro, who is voiced by someone who I think is a really good voice actor. And Tsuda Kenjiro. Meanwhile, Rachel, who is currently disguised as Michelle Light, also manages to form a trio and ravage through the qualifiers, defeating multiple people alongside Endorsi, who is another one of the princesses of Jahad. Bam forms a co-alliance and he sweeps and keeps going through to the later stages. Moreover, Bam discovers Michelle Light's true identity, which she previously had asked Khun to hide, and Anak, who is a very important character, is a daughter of another princess of Jahad and possesses another of the 13-month swords, and hers is called, I don't actually know the name of her sword. Which she inherited from her mother. So Endorsi doesn't really like Anak, and she challenges her in a duel for the sword in which they both sustain injuries. Hang Sung and Bam in a test later on retrieve an agent under the King of Jahad who is tipped off by Hang Sung, which leads to confrontation between the three princesses, and the ranker ends up in defeat later. The penultimate episode left us off on a cliffhanger, to which we should get hyped for the season finale to end on a high. Sorry, I misspoke. So essentially what I'm saying is, I'm going to kind of summarize. So the final episode of the anime was kind of to get you hyped for season 2. Now, when I was watching season 1 of the anime, I must admit it did kind of seem like a prologue, and I feel like, especially after we saw the ending of season 1, it is almost definitely going to get a season 2. Especially now, I feel like we're going to see more of Bam, and we're going to get to really see Bam's character, and he's not just going to be classified as the simp for Rachel. But yeah, let's keep going on with this review. Should you watch this anime? So, coming from a pretty good source, and is authored by SIU, Tower of God, for me, it lived up to its expectations. I wasn't really expecting anything too big, but it had pretty good production quality offered by TMS, with an equally incredible music work. It had really good music, and that quite lifted up the show's ratings. You know, if you got good music, it's going to lift up a show's ratings. A great bit of development for our main character has been seen for someone who is initially just following Rachel like a stray dog who's lost his owner, and he begins to evolve himself into this kind of self-reliant, strong character through power of friendship. Continues to march on through the tower. Khun is another character who was sought after in the anime. His unparalleled fondness towards Bam and helping him in every stage of the test as a sketch of his past is also shown, and an acquaintance of him gets a bit of screen time near the ending of the anime. An average shonen canon that transcends its genre, which disappointed me kind of in the beginning, owing to its generic theme and an fuck me, I can't talk, innovative premise. So, I would say the anime was kind of disappointing at the beginning. I was like, okay, you've got an interesting story, we've got a lot of mysteries. I was kind of expecting something a bit bigger. This is the first webtoon manhwa adaptation after all. I mean, I was expecting flames, bro. I was expecting a bunch of shit, to be honest with you. But after, I would say, on the later stages, it got to get a lot better, with us seeing really how smart Kun was, and other different things. Because at first I was like, oh my god, this is such a generic show. I mean, wow. And I would say it was an anime that was pretty well catered from the beginning to end. And it was good to match someone who's binging anime. It's a good anime to binge, I'd say. And I would say it is the most recommended anime of 2020 so far. But, God of High School is coming. But I don't know, I haven't watched the full of God of High School. So I'll when I do my review of God of High School, we'll see if that'll change, And in conclusion, it would be a shame not to say that Tower of God opened the gateway for a new era of webtoon adaptations. With a couple of other webtoons getting adapted, Tower of God definitely did its job and is bound to get a second season. The anime even managed to draw more people towards its source material who wanted to get a more advanced reading on the anime to see what happens next. Now, a lot of people would say that the anime was more seen as mediocre, and I would say I don't know about all that, if it was mediocre, but one thing I do want to address is Bam being a simp. I'm going to quickly go over this. Bam is not a simp. Wow, I've seen so many people saying Bam is a simp. Maybe it was just me watching the anime, but Bam never really seemed to have any romantic interest towards Rachel. He didn't really like her like that. I would just say that the way their relationship blossomed and the way it formulated was kind of motherly. I kind of saw Rachel as a mother figure towards Bam due to the fact that she found Bam hidden away under some rocks, and then she took him in, raised him, and they spoke and grew up kind of together, to be honest with you. I don't know how many years they spent, but they've definitely spent a lot of time together for Bam to like her this much. And once Rachel left him, Bam was kind of lost. He spent his whole life with Rachel. He doesn't really know who he is without Rachel, and the story is kind of showing you Bam becoming a person without Rachel, because in the beginning, season 1, it's clear all Bam really wants is to meet Rachel and do whatever Rachel wants, because Rachel is his everything. It's all he's ever known. So to call Bam a simp is kind of derogatory. I would say that Bam kind of is more, as I've said before, like a dog. And when you leave your dog, he will always wait for his owner. You've seen those YouTube videos of dogs waiting 10 years to reunite with their owners. That is what I would say Bam is kind of like, and I'm expecting by the end of this anime for Bam to have completely evolved from that. He is no longer reliant on Rachel, especially after seeing the season finale. Spoiler alert, but Rachel pushes Bam off, betraying him and breaking his trust. Bam is thought to be killed by Rachel by us, the viewer, until it is revealed that Bam actually survived, which of course he did. He's the freaking... I'd say he's the main character, bro. But overall, I watched Tower of God in subbed because I couldn't be bothered to wait for the dubbed. And I initially would say I kind of wanted to love Tower of God. I was like, this is a new anime. This is a new, beginning for anime. I think this show could be so sick. But it's just, in conclusion, it kind of felt lackluster, to be fair. It was a good anime, but maybe I set my expectations a little bit too high going into this show. But Tower of God appealed to me in most aspects, because I kind of liked the way they went with things with the tower. Now, I was really scared about how they were going to do the tower, because when you've got an anime like this, I was like, okay, so it's got a kind of Sword Art Online kind of thing going on with it being 100 floors, and please don't get me started on Sword Art Online. Oh my god. Wow, that's its own video. Do you know what? I'm not going to talk about Sword Art Online in a video, to be honest. Unless this video gets a bunch of likes and someone comments it down below. Because the issue with Sword Art Online is I feel like everybody's essentially dressed every single fucking issue with it. But I will be reviewing the newest season to come out for Sword Art Online, Alicization. So yeah, I was kind of scared that this would, go into one of those things where Tower of God would be like a floor, and then, there's like a boss at the end of the floor, and you fight him, and then you go up a floor, and I thought it was going to be like that, but it was kind of had this almost mini-game aspect, and I really liked Hunter x Hunter, that exam arc, so I was really looking forward, actually, to seeing the fun tests that the characters had to take on to climb the tower. There's also this mystery aspect as well, because characters have hidden motives, and the tower obviously has a lot of secrets. However, both the tests and the overall story really suffer because of poor direction. It's a shame the show ended up this way, to be honest with you, because the beginning episodes were worth watching. It got you really hooked into the show. Although I did say that they were a bit lackluster, they did kind of entice you and want you to know more about the show. It wasn't one of those animes where you watch the first episodes and you're really bored. You are left with a bunch of questions wanting to watch the second episode, which is good. And the tests at the beginning are mostly fine. The first test is, your classic deathmatch battle royale, and we are immediately interested in one of the main characters, which is Kun, and I would say that up until now, the show has been fine, to be honest with you. We also got that crown game, which is where the serious problems begin. Now, the crown game was kind of like this King of the Hill type of game, where the goal is to grab the crown and sit on the throne. The pacing is kind of awkward, with the characters standing around instead of fighting. Even though there is a time limit, the fights themselves aren't that great. We only had really, I guess, one or two good fights, and there isn't really that much progression during the fight before it ends, or the scene where it switches to other characters fighting. Little strategy is used during these fights, which is something that Tower of God suffers from a lot. Even though there is some strategy involved on how the team chooses to participate in the game, I kind of wanted to see some more cool fights involving the big throne as a terrain, but we kind of got nothing interesting. The rules of the game are a little arbitrary, as we can see a character jump off the throne against one of the rules, and nobody even acknowledges it. It is difficult to become invested in these tests when the rules kind of aren't consistent. I have mentioned that the mystery element so far hasn't been strong. Not enough information is ever given to us, in my opinion, to make any connections or come up with that many theories. Either we are left with not knowing what is going on at all, or something is simply explained by a character's backstory. The characters themselves aren't that great either, unless a character like Bam or Rachel is heavily built upon. There are probably just too many characters for the anime to really cover and make interesting, and a lot of them might just have this tragic history, and comic relief characters are kind of overused, in my opinion. On a positive note, there is an interesting theme of characters questioning their motivations for climbing the tower, which I think is a really interesting ideological view, because you think to yourself, oh, why am I actually doing this? And it can get kind of interesting looking into the way a character thinks. I could be a bit more critical of the characters, but the anime has only covered the beginning of the story, and there's potential for some very interesting development after seeing the season finale. After the crown game is when things, I would say, become truly kind of a shit show. All the characters are assigned roles which they will specialize in during combat. However, the show does a very poor job explaining the combat system. Characters receive training for their roles, such as, you got the spearmen, the Shinsu users, but the audience doesn't really understand the point of the role or how they work or why there's even a point to them. The next game is a game of tag, which begins, and I would say this is actually decent, because we get to see how smart Kun is and really develop on Kun some more. And it isn't really clear, one thing I would say is it isn't really clear when they win, and it is kind of confusing when you're watching this, which is not good for an anime like this. Not much to say from the next game. It's kind of boring, and it suffers from the same problems of the audience not really understanding what is happening and not knowing what a character's actions accomplishes. The twists are unimpactful, and the fights are dull and pretty predictable. You can kind of assume what's going to happen while a fight is happening. We get the annoying trope where a character refuses to finish off an opponent and, gets cocky, you do a Vegeta and you kind of gloat around. Overall, Tower of God is a pretty hype adaptation, especially for webtoon readers, since the webtoon finally made an anime series. But the art is pretty good, and I would say that the animation quality is quite better than the webtoon, so we can get a better grasp and a better picture about what is happening in the series, because in the webtoon the art quality, from what I've seen, was not all that good, and we only got a few moving panels. But the art style did improve this quite a bit. Overall, Tower of God is a good series, but I hope that it will get better more towards season 2, and I think that this is why the anime could have been, a bit better, to be honest with you. The plot was pretty complex, filled with questions. You have no idea what's kind of going on, and the focus is action, but it continues to change things quite a bit. Instead of pure action, you have a lot of elements in with a good plot in base. You kind of don't really get bored during the anime, which is pretty good for an anime. But overall, Tower of God, pretty good show. That was my anime review for it. I did a Gleipnir review as well. This was kind of a more randomy review. I had a few notes written down, which I was just, scrolling through, but it wasn't really a scripted video to say. I kind of just had a few notes written down and I elaborated off of them. If you did enjoy this video, leave a like and comment while you're at it and you're down there, and make sure you hit that red button and subscribe, and I'll see you all laters.